Welcome. Thanks for tuning in. You're listening to Gnostic Studies, and we'd like to do another lecture combined with a practice today. So really it's just a short, we're going to do a review of the previous class, and then we're going to study some supplementary information related with an aspect of Aries, and then we'll do some practices to help us gather the energy of Aries. Today's the last day of Aries, well, depending on how you number it, how you look at it. But today can definitely be considered the last day of Aries. So let's take advantage to grab that fiery energy, that energy of initiating, of beginning, of starting, that springy spring energy. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comments area. Let me give you the link for the previous class. We'll do the review. Got the handout on the screen. The previous class we read from the Aries chapter of Esoteric Treatise of Hermetic Astrology by Samaello and Veor. And he talked about how our human organism is a living zodiac, because the zodiacal signs correspond to different parts within the human body. Aries is the head, Taurus is the throat, Gemini are the arms, legs, and lungs, right? The paired things, I don't want to say paired organs, because I guess you can consider the kidneys also paired, but double. Cancer, related with the thymus gland. Leo, with the heart. Virgo, with the abdomen and the intestines. Libra, where is it? There we go. Libra, with the kidneys. Scorpio, with the sexual glands, sexual organs. Sagittarius, with the femoral arteries. Capricorn, with the knees. Aquarius, with the calves. And Pisces, with the feet. This is a graphic from another book, but it does indicate this same thing. Another thing that he mentioned was that we need to awaken the consciousness in all of these different zodiacal signs, and that's part of why we need to do the zodiacal exercises, because that helps us to be able to do that. Here, we need to awaken consciousness in order to cause each of the 12 parts of our own microcosmic zodiac to shine and sparkle. Our entire zodiac should become light and splendor. He recommended the mantra Mara, because he says it causes the spinal fires and the magnetic centers of the spine to vibrate. One of the themes that was mentioned in the second class on Aries as well is the idea that there are temples in every planet, star, which is a sun, right? Satellite or moon, and comet throughout the starry space. And that inside of those heart temples inside of those mansions, or heavenly mansions, as he calls them, there is a genie, or an angel, or a divinity, basically, we could say, that we can ask for assistance. But before we enter in, we need to request permission, and that there's 2 guardians at the temple, and that he gave us the passwords, right? Jacquin and Boaz. We'll go over that practice again today. We have that handout from the second class on Aries. So the planets in our solar system each have their own genie, or as he calls them, children genie. And they work in their alchemical laboratories inside their temples to cause different changes on our planet and in different places. So the moon is related with Gabriel, Venus with Uriel, although Anael also works with Venus. Mercury is Raphael, the sun, Michael, Mars, Samael, Jupiter, Zachariel, and Saturn, Oriphiel. So in this handout, we also give some descriptions from, I believe it's from Manual of Practical Magic, that talks about the sort of departments, or the realm that each one of the planets corresponds to. So for example, if we want to prepare our body for the exercise of practical magic, then we can work with Gabriel. We'll study that in the constellation of Cancer. Venus is related with love. If we want help with that, or in some way, love and art, to work with that, then we can ask Uriel and Anael for help. Mercury is related with learning, but also with medicine. So we can ask for help with that, but he's also related with the cosmic mind. So there's all these descriptions in there. And again, there's more information in that book, Manual of Practical Magic. So if we need help with something, and I remember I had a speeding ticket. This is almost 20 years ago now. And so I worked with the appropriate star to try and help that. Now, I still had to go to court because I was speeding above the whatever it was, 20 above, and they deemed it necessary for that. But when I went there, I was able to negotiate something so that I didn't have, I didn't get in as much trouble as I could have. So, and I attributed it to my work with the related planetary genie. So, that being said, in the handout, there is also another practice. We'll go over this, but next thing that we're going to do is jump into today's material. Okay, we got a question here. Does tonight's lecture have magic? We're going to be doing a practice to connect with the genie of Aries, planet Aries. Which plants and archangels are specifically officiants of magic? They all are magicians, obviously, or I guess I shouldn't say obviously, but in order to proceed and to get closer to divinity, we have to learn occultism, the science, the occult science. So they clearly are going to be very powerful magicians. Each one of them. So we ask them for help, but they work with the White Lodge. They work in accordance with the law of karma. They don't violate that law. So we need to learn that rule too, which is related to the rules or golden rules that were talked about in the second class on Aries. Let's look at that real quick. In the schools of internal instruction, we're made to learn these golden rules. The lion of the law is fought with the scale. When an inferior law is transcended by a superior law, the superior law washes away the inferior law. We need to understand that what karma is, why it exists, and we need to learn to pay what we owe and not avoid our debts. This is the key to internal development. This is the key to spiritual development and to our genuine magical development. So, we recommend that you continue to study these classes, to continue to study the Gnostic instructors so that we can know more. We're referring to Samael Elohim Veor, Wiracocha, Elphas Levi, and others. So let's back it up, go back to where we were. Hopefully that helped answer the question. Got another question. After the teaching, will you post the notes here? No, actually we won't post the notes, but what we'll do is we'll give you a link to the notes right now so that you can get them. The class that we're going to study today is in the notes, in the comments there. And if you go to notes to the second class on Aries, Gnostic Zodiacal course, it'll have the notes that we're referring to. All right. So let's see what we've got to refer to today. The pineal gland. All right. Why are we talking about this? Well, if you remember, since Aries corresponds to the head, the pineal gland, and we'll see in a little bit that the other one is the pituitary gland, correspond to the glands of the head. And talked about different practices to activate those glands. So this is from a book called, what's it called? Fundamental Notions of Endocrinology and Criminology. It's got another name too. In English, they've translated it as sexology, something like that. The idea is when we study these different glands, we understand the corresponding chakras and therefore occult or esoteric faculties that can be developed in them. So we're going to look at the two related to the head, the pineal gland and the pituitary gland. The pineal gland is situated in the posterior part of the brain. This small gland is only 5 millimeters in diameter. A very important, fine, sand-like tissue surrounds it. So 5 millimeters, let's say, is about 1/4 of an inch. The pineal gland is a small tissue of a gray-reddish color. This small gland is intimately related with the sexual organs. The pineal gland secretes certain hormones that regulate the whole process of evolution and the development of the sexual organs. Conventional science assures us that after these hormones have achieved their purpose, then this gland degenerates into a fibrous tissue. They state that after the total development of the sexual organs, the pineal gland is no longer capable of secreting any hormones. Descartes assured us that this gland is the seat of the soul. Asians assure us that this gland is an atrophied third eye. When the medical science of the Western world discovered that this gland is only a reddish-grayish tissue situated in the posterior part of the brain, then it rejected the affirmation of Descartes and of the East. It would have been better not to have created scientific dogmas, and to have studied instead all the concepts in an eclectic and didactic form. The yogis of India assure us that the pineal gland is the window of Brahma, the diamond eye, the eye of polyvoyance, that through some special training gives us the perception of the ultra. Western science should study these concepts of Eastern yoga, since Western science is not the only authority on science. It is urgent also to study Eastern science. We need a complete, integral culture. The microscope allows us to perceive objectively that which is infinitely small. The telescope allows us to see the infinitely large. If the pineal gland allows us to see the ultra of all things, then we should study Eastern yoga and develop that wonderful gland. The yogis of India have practices through which one can obtain a special superfunction of the pineal gland. Then we perceive the ultra. To deny this affirmation of Eastern yoga is not scientific. It is necessary to study and analyze. The Eastern sages say that sexual potency depends on the potency of the pineal gland. Now we can explain to ourselves the scientific basis of chastity. There is no doubt that all the great biblical prophets were great pinealists. Scientific chastity combined with certain practices permitted them to see the ultra of nature. Gnostics state that the atom of the Holy Spirit is found within the pineal gland. Biology is resolved to investigate all these things. The Easterners affirm that in the pineal gland is found the lotus flower of 1,000 petals. There is no doubt that this is the crown of saints. Human beings of great intelligence have their pineal gland highly developed. It has been discovered that the pineal glands of Cretans are atrophied. The great phenomena through which the masses become fascinated, so common in India, is only possible when the authentic fakir has the pineal gland full of great vigor. The blood directly absorbs the secretions of the endocrine glands. The blood bears all the secretions of the endocrine glands to the other organs and glands that are then forced to be pushed in a major effort to more intense work. The word hormone comes from a Greek word that means to excite. Indeed, the hormones have the power of exciting the whole organism and of obliging it to work. The secretions of the endocrine glands also have influence over the mind. We now see why the Hindustani dedicate themselves to controlling the mind. Through our mind, we can regulate our hormonal functions. Some Hindustani sages have remained buried for many months without dying. Biology cannot remain indifferent to all this. Biologists need to investigate all these wonders of Asia. Just as a side note, I got a book. I I don't know, probably 15 years ago, that was called, I think it was called Oriental Magic. But in any case, it had this one case that was when the British were in India. There was a man who claimed that he could be brought back from the dead or whatever. So he was there with his students. He was like a yogi. And in order to find out whether or not it was true, he went to the yogi was like with a general or some kind of high-ranking person in the British Army. And he said, okay, well, we're going to need to do this, this, and this. And then, and so they built a brick building around him to make sure that nobody touched him. And then after whatever it was, I don't know, 7 days or something, they broke the wall down and went in and got him, and they thought he was dead still. But his student had been instructed to put a little bit of water on his lips over and over and over again until his lips, till he started to moisten, and to put them around his nose a little bit. And then slowly the guy came back. And then he came all the way back, into the physical world, we could say, into his physical body. And then the people, the sergeant or general or whatever, was pretty shocked. But so anyway, it reminded me of that when it said that the sages have remained buried for many months without dying. I don't remember the length of time, and it made an impression on me when I read that book. I wondered if it was possible. And clearly that's why it's interesting to study this stuff, because it shows that there is this sort of thread of Eastern science that is different. But that being said, let's jump back into the material. Mr. Immanuel Kant admits that there is a nisus formativus in our physical body. The Eastern sages believe that the nisus formativus is a fluidic body that is in contact with the autonomic nervous system and with the liquid central nervous system. There is no doubt that this fluidic body is the protoplasmatic astral body mentioned by medieval doctors. The human mind and all those purely psychic principles. Sorry, let me read that again. The human mind and all those purely psychic principles are within the astral body. The senses of this astral body seem to bloom like lotus flowers from the very essence of the endocrine glands. The lotus of 1,000 petals, mentioned by yogis of India, is a psychic sense of the astral body. The special development of the pineal gland allows us to perceive the astral body in its psychic senses like lotus flowers blooming from the endocrine glands. Medical science plays with the mechanism of phenomena, yet it does not know its vital depth. The special development of the pineal gland allows us to see the very vital depth. So that was from chapter 1. I think this next one is from chapter 2. Yeah. Pituitary gland. The pituitary gland is very small. Biology affirms that this gland is just the size of a pea, and that it marvelously hangs from the very base of the brain and harmoniously rests over the sphenoid bone. We find a marvelous trinity related with this gland. The law of the triangle rules everything created. Indeed, 3 parts, 2 lobes, and a middle form the pituitary gland. Behold, here is the triangle, the marvelous law of all creation. Biologists believe that life is absolutely impossible without the anterior or posterior lobe of the pituitary gland. The anterior lobe of this gland is in charge of administering the size of the structure of the cellular community. Well now, we must know that within this administration there is also regulation and control. This is the only way we can explain to ourselves how life becomes impossible without the frontal lobes of the pituitary gland. The hyperfunction of the anterior lobe of the pituitary originates gigantic human beings. When the function of the anterior lobe is insufficient, then dwarves are the outcome. Therefore, it is logical to suppose that without the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland, life would be impossible, since this gland regulates the size of the structure of the cellular community. Some forms of idiocy and blindness are also due to some abnormalities of the frontal lobe of the pituitary. The function of the posterior lobe of the pituitary gland is to wonderfully invigorate the involuntary muscles of the organism. The secretion of the pituitary also affects the excretion of water from the kidneys. Doctors use the pituitary to aid them in cases of difficult birth. Master H.P. Blavatsky stated that the pituitary gland is the page or servant and light bearer of the pineal gland. The Dr. Krumheller, professor of medicine at the University of Berlin, stated that between the pituitary and pineal glands there is a small, very subtle channel or capillary. This channel or capillary is not found in dead bodies. Thus, these two glands are found connected by this fine channel. There is no doubt whatsoever about electrobiology and the bioelectromagnetic forces. Why then is a bioelectromagnetic interchange or exchange between the pineal and pituitary glands not accepted? The time has come to start analyzing all mystical, sensory, and psychosomatic possibilities without fanaticism, prejudices, and dogmatisms. The yogis of Hindustan state that the lotus of two petals sprouts from the pituitary gland. The Western scientists, instead of laughing at these affirmations, should study them profoundly. To laugh at what we do not know is not scientific. The lotus flower is found situated in the astral body exactly between the eyebrows. The sages of Hindustani give these lotus flowers the name of chakras. The yogis assure us that the pituitary chakra makes us clairvoyant. In the holy land of the Vedas, there are many secret practices for the development of clairvoyance. The Hindustanis state that these chakras have 8 major and 36 minor powers. The clairvoyant can perceive the ultra of nature. The clairvoyant can perceive the fourth dimension, and the clairvoyant can also perceive the astral body. All the psychic and spiritual principles of the human being are found within the astral body. Glandular energetics cannot be denied by biologists. The bioelectromagnetic interchange of the pineal and pituitary glands makes us clairvoyant. There seems to be a certain relationship between copper atoms and the pituitary gland. Some sages utilize the element copper to develop clairvoyance. Nostradamus remained for hours gazing at the waters contained inside a receptacle of pure copper. This wise physician made prophecies that have come true with exactitude over time. The astrologists assure us that Venus influences the pituitary gland, and Venus also influences copper. Only this way can we comprehend the intimate relationship between copper and the pituitary gland. We need to be less dogmatic and more studious. We need to be more eclectic and more didactic. The pituitary gland secretes 7 types of hormones. The value of the pituitary gland in obstetrics is incalculable. Dr. Jorge Adum, the famous Gnostic writer and great master of major mysteries of the White Lodge, stated that the atom of the cosmic Christ is found within the Pituitary Gland, while the atom of the Father is found within the magnetic field at the root of the nose. Biology analyzes and studies the scientific concepts of all sages. Biology came from the horrible materialism of the 18th century. Thus, now it is starting to study all the physical, psychic, and spiritual potencies of the internal secretions of the glands. All right. Well, that's the end of the material that we were going to cover for the class today. Before I pop up the next thing we're going to look at, let me just see if you guys have any questions or comments about it. Right. So we reviewed the pineal and pituitary glands because they are the glands that correspond to Aries. So if you don't have any questions, then we'll jump right into the next step, which is need to review something with you because last week there was a question. Let's see here. Last week there was a question about why Aries rules the Arcanum number 9. So I know on the card, the Gnostic Egyptian tarot cards, it does have the Aries and Mars. However, when we analyze Samael and Veor's information and what he gives in terms of the zodiacal and astrological correspondences, what we find is that Aries corresponds to 5. And number 9 corresponds to the sun of Leo. So wanted to clarify that. And Mars is, we could say, severe. And Arcanum 5 is the Hierophant, the master, the hierarch. Sometimes in the French cards it's called the Pope, meaning the director or the leader, the spiritual leader, or the spiritual a spiritual person with authority to instruct, to teach. And in order for us to acquire that position, we have to be severe with ourselves. So we wanted to clarify that. This is just a handout that we're still working on because it doesn't have all the material, but trying to cite, where the things came from, what chapter it came from, so that we can say and confirm, where the information originated. But we still are missing some information. We don't always have everything. And to look at what other authors say as well. So anyway, just wanted to mention that before we jump into the practice, because that's what we're interested in, right? Learning how to practice, doing some practices. So let's keep scrolling down on the handout. This is now another handout from Aries 2 or Aries B, 1B. If you're looking at the web pages, it's at the bottom of that. It has our favorite golden rule. The lion of the law is fought with the scales. And we're going to learn what that means when we study Taurus. But the idea is that the lion of the law is very strong, very severe to some extent, but when it comes for us, we better be ready, better prepare ourselves. And the scale means learning how to balance, learning how to be balanced, learning how to even out things, learning how to pay what we owe so that we don't have debts. But on this handout, we have a number of, at the very bottom here, we have, or the second page, I should say, we have a number of practices, right? 1, 2, 3. So let's do these practices here today. We'll go through them together. And so if you're not already seated, we're going to ask you to find a comfortable place to sit or lay down on your back on the floor. But before you do that, grab some water or something, because we're going to do some mantras also, and sometimes your throat can get dry. If you have incense, it's also nice to burn incense. We have some Palo Santo here, so we're going to light that. It's very nice to use cleaning incense. The ones we like are juniper, Palo Santo, copal, camphor. They can really help to change the way a place feels, the way that an individual feels as well. And so just burn a little bit, maybe a quarter or a third of a incense stick, or just enough to kind of touch it. You don't necessarily have to oversaturate it. And so that can really help us. All right. So let me So again, sit. Let's start with the first exercise. Sit comfortably and remain thoughtless for 5 minutes. If you have trouble with quieting the mind, we recommend to do some pranayama. And if you're interested in that material, if you want to find out more, about doing pranayama, you can send us an email at gnosticstudies@gmail.com, and we'll send you some information about it, or you can send us a message in whatever platform you're on. A practice we gave last time was to do a scan of the body, to give the attention something to do, right? So we can start with the mid-brow point between the eyebrows, and then we can go down to the nose, to the chin, and descend all the way front of the body down to the toes, then under the feet and back up the back of the body to make a complete circle up the back of the head to the midpoint of the eyebrows. And we can use that, directing our attention through that path up and down with our attention. Okay, now we're going to move to the next step, part 2. So now we've been sitting thoughtless. We want to pray to our inner divinity, our inner being, with this prayer. My Father, you who are me myself, you who are my true being, I beg you to transport yourself to the principal star of the constellation of Aries, in order to bring the principal genie of that constellation to this humble home. So that he may heal my brain and awaken all the occult powers of my head. Cross the arms over the chest so that the tips of the fingers are at the shoulders, right over left. Then we're going to inhale and bow to the right, or bow to the right and then inhale. And say Jakin. We're going to come back to the center. Bow to the left. Inhale and say Boaz. Boaz. Then again we pray to our inner being, saying, My Father, take the 7 sacred steps within. Towards the interior of the temple. And kneel down or prostrate yourself at the feet of the principal genie of Aries, begging him to come and awaken the powers of my brain, and to inundate my head with light. Now we're going to say the mantra Aum 4 times. Now extend your right arm forward, and then you're going to nod down 7 times. So from the place where your chin is, when you sit normally, go down 7 times, and then back up to where it is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now bringing your chin back to center, then we're going to nod backwards 7 times, so the head is going to go back, and then return to the original starting place. The arm is still straight out in front of you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then we're going to turn to the right. So the chin is going to go towards the right shoulder. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Same thing to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now the intention of those practices is that the light enters into the glands, the pineal and pituitary glands in our brain. We can bring the arm down. Now we're going to move into the second exercise, which is we're going to vocalize the vowel I. It recommends doing it for 1 hour, but we're not going to do it for that long right now. We'll do it for about 15 minutes. So let's relax the physical body again. We're going to be bringing our attention to the interior of the brain, where we find the pineal and pituitary glands. The vowel I is pronounced E. So we should each do this at our own pace. You don't have to do it the same as anyone else. You do it with your breath. So you inhale through the nose, then exhale through the mouth, pronouncing the vowel E. However long your breath lasts, you exhale the sound, and then you inhale again through the nose, exhale through the mouth, E. We're just going to keep repeating that. Okay, it says this vowel will cause your pineal gland to vibrate, and finally you will become clairvoyant. So remember, we prayed asking for the principal genie of Aries to descend, to come to our place, and to help awaken the powers of the brain and to inundate our head with light, to heal our brain, and to awaken the occult powers of our head. So we can concentrate on all of that. Imagine light entering into the brain. We can even imagine columns of fire entering into the brain. And that the angel of Aries is assisting us with magical passes of his hands, or in whatever way we can want to imagine that. So let's begin. Let's do 3 more times. Let's take a couple nice deep breaths. The final exercise is to imagine the fire from the constellation of Aries descending from heaven and entering into our pineal gland in fiery or igneous columns, so pillars of fire. So we'll do that for about 5 minutes. Just imagining from the stars descends some fiery energy in the form of a ray or a beam or a column or a pillar, descending, entering into our head, warming, cleaning our brain and our pineal gland. As we bring this practice to a close, let's take this opportunity to thank our inner being for the help, protection, the assistance that we've received. And to the masters of the White Lodge for their help, giving us these practices through their teachers so that we can participate in the light and the teachings of the consciousness. And whenever we feel ready, we can bring this practice to a final close, opening our eyes, coming back to the room. Well, thanks for participating with us. Thanks for doing practices. Soon we'll learn about the practice for Taurus. The vowel will be E, which is pronounced eh, related with the throat. And we'll find out more next Thursday. If you have any questions or comments, you know what to do. We want to invite you to join us next week. And in the meantime, you can always email us, gnosticstudies@gmail.com, or leave a comment on the video, and we'll check back periodically and be able to respond. But that's all we got. So, thanks. Thanks for sharing with us again. And if you guys don't have any questions or comments, then we'll conclude it there. All right. Well, have a good one. And as always, we wish you the best in your esoteric work.